Hi, I'm Levi, and I'm building a crystal portal. This is the Crystal Portal Podcast, where we talk about crystals, moldavite, spirit guides, sacred geometry, intuition, quantum energy, and all things metaphysical. Find something special for your spiritual journey. Shop online at moldavitejewelry.com to support my work. Welcome to episode 6 of the podcast. Today we are talking vortexes, also known as vortices. So no doubt, if you've heard the term vortex, you're most likely familiar with Sedona, Arizona. It's probably the most well-known here in the U.S. Now, an interesting thing about Sedona is it lines up on the 33rd parallel right here in Asheville. And an interesting fact about Asheville is that there are a lot of quartz in the mountains. They say it's almost like we're living in a giant crystal bowl because the energy here is just different. It's hard to describe, but you just kind of have to sense and feel it. I remember when I first moved here about 8 years ago, I felt like I had weights in my pockets. It's almost like, you had 5 pounds of weights when you're walking around downtown. It's kind of weird. Anyways, I had that for about 2 months or so. Adjusted to the energy of the area, and you'll talk to locals here and they'll tell you, there's just you can't really put your finger on it, but the area is like a vortex. Like, it kind of calls to people. People will be just passing through, or for some strange reason feel called to actually come and live here in Asheville. You can actually look up vortex hikes or vortex tours and go on hikes here in the Blue Ridge Mountains to see and feel some of those vortex energies for yourself. Some other locations around the world, you may have heard about the vortex energy in Mount Shasta area, Stonehenge, some say over there where the pyramids are at in Egypt, and various other locations around the world. Those are good examples of natural vortexes, but you can also create vortex energy yourself. What is a vortex? A vortex is a natural concentration of spiritual, electric, or electromagnetic energy. They're often found or naturally occurring where several ley lines intersect. The interesting thing about Asheville here is 3 ley lines intersect in this area. So if you recall in the last episode, my guides had said to anchor the vortex. Now there are 3 stones specifically that they've mentioned during several meditations that assist with quote-unquote anchoring the vortex: black tourmaline, covellite, and benitoite. A benitoite is another one that they also described as creating a stable bridge. Some of the footage that you're seeing here is of where I'm actually creating the components with the minerals that my guys had mentioned to anchor the vortex. So what I did was I took some duct tape, sterling silver settings, and put the duct tape around the settings to create a mold. And the purpose of the mold is to hold the various crystals and meteorites in place. So essentially creating an orgone component. And if you look really close, you can see the blue crystals are benitoite. Again, very interesting energy. It's a personal favorite of mine. Piezoitite, these little pink crystals, also vortex energy. Very small gold nuggets, 1 gold nugget in each of these. The tan-colored mineral is actually a meteorite, a Mount Ergoton meteorite from Australia. An interesting thing about the Mount Ergoton aubrite meteorite is that the rare classification of aubrites is that they are theorized to be fragments of planet Mercury. So if you think about that in astrology, fast-moving energy. Kind of the dark olive green fragment there is a piece of Tatooine meteorite. Interesting fact about Tatooine, it's in a classification of meteorites called HED achondrite. Now, the achondrites are thought to be fragments of asteroid Vesta, which is out there between Mars and Jupiter. And Tatooine has kind of a self-guided nature to it. It's a very interesting dynamic energy. And the shiny blue mineral there is covellite. A covellite is one of the two specifically that guides mentioned to anchor the vortex. So once everything was set in there, I removed the tape and then set the stones. Now the purpose of setting the prongs of the sterling silver settings on top of the covellite was to conduct energy. So later on, these will be wired and actually connected to a physical ground that will be plugged in, connected to the earth. And once I had all of the prongs set down on top of the covellite, went ahead and placed them directly on top of the selenite towers. Now these towers will be placed in a crystal grid formation around the crystal portal once it's complete. So here's a fun activity you can try with a pendulum. So this right here is a pendulum that I made. If you see, there are a number of crystals, meteorites, and moldavite that were drilled. So I actually drilled some of these beads myself. And in the bottom portion here, there are other minerals. So this pendulum is more or less finely tuned to dowsing. Now, when I'm creating these tools, I like to take kind of a deep dive and learn as much as I can about the metaphysical properties based on a couple of good books. One of them, Melody, Love is in the Earth, wrote a phenomenal book about minerals. And so I tried to choose the most ideal minerals primarily suited for connecting with higher self, connecting with your guides, and for dowsing. So it's a finely tuned pendulum of sorts. So you can use a pendulum if you're out and about in nature or anywhere really. If you get a sense that there's kind of a vortex or some unusual energy in the area, you can hold your pendulum stationary and see what it does. So when I was out on one of these vortex hikes, I took the pendulum out and it began to swing with quite a bit of inertia behind it. So if you've ever wondered, how can you pick up whether or not there is a vortex in the area, you can use a pendulum. Now, one of the visual indicators, if you see a tree that has grown really twisted, like the whole trunk is just twisted, that's an indicator that there could very well be a vortex in that area. Interesting aspect about that is I saw this thing on YouTube where an electrical engineer had brought his laptop and some sensitive equipment out there in Sedona and was testing to see if there were any electromagnetic anomalies in the area. And so he pointed out that you, again, will often find some vortex energies where you'll see trunks of trees that were really twisted. And sure enough, he showed that there were spikes and variations in the areas where they were present. I decided to try this out in the crystal portal. So I took my pendulum, as you can see here, was standing near the very center of it on the platform, one of the two platforms, this area that I refer to as the bridge. As you can see, the pendulum begins to swing. It's got quite a bit of inertia with it. If you notice on the platform itself, there's a lot of sacred geometry. Find out more about sacred geometry in the next episode.